And we are live. Hello, everybody. It's Thursday again. Time for our weekly Anchore open source gardening session. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Dan, and today we've got Alex Goodman, we've got Will Murphy, we've got Chris Phillips. We are the Anchore open source engineering team. We talk about any and all things security, compliance, SBOM. Our tooling is generally set up to give folks a quick way to inspect and validate, verify, and check various types of software. Our projects are primarily at Anchore, Grype, Syft, and Grant. Those are the vulnerability scanner, SBOM generator, and license policy checker, respectively. And generally, we go through our community tickets on our open source projects, looking for things that need discussion, things that need some triage. We'll look at PRs. We'll look at particularly interesting topics where there isn't maybe an obvious answer, so we talk about it here amongst ourselves and you. And so let's get started today. We've got up on the screen, we've got our needs discussions, but if you guys had anything else you'd like to focus on first, we can start in either place.
I like the first one, that multiple occurrences of the same web.
All right.
That looks fun.
Let's check it out. This is Syft 4324.
Yeah, it looks like, I think Keith got a head start on this one. So let's see, generating an SBOM where that includes multiple statically linked Go binaries that have the same, multiple instances of the same Go module and version. Yeah, this is pretty common. So like you'll have, containerd, CTR, containerd-shim that all have containerd at v1.7.27. Yeah, this is common. I mean, this maybe a little bit of background. Like we've had in early days of Syft, we were saying when we were trying to go back and forth, what is the right behavior for, SBOM size versus and deduplicating stuff. And we have one leading philosophy in Syft, which is like, which we'll try to raise up what we actually found as accurately as we can, the raw information as best we can. And that led to the default decision for this, when you find the same package in multiple places, to leave them as separate things. And the reason is you may have multiple projects that have nothing to do with one another that happen to be using the same dependency. So they are separate dependency trees, and preserving that dependency tree is what we said was a good default sense, because we don't know if they should be merged. So the downside is that leads to larger SBOMs. When you have situations like this, where like, you have multiple binaries using the same dependency, you really just want to see it once. Because you really want the container image from its perspective. You might care less about how you got to that dependency. You just care about what dependencies you have. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's what this is, and B, some historical context. I don't know if anybody else had questions or something to add before I jump. Yeah. So I feel like there could be a fun feature out of this one for Syft, meaning like, well, Syft so far has been very opinionated about what the ontology is for that SBOM, and this is true for all SBOM generators. We try to raise up packages we know are definitely installed and are definitely present, so we don't raise up packages in the SBOM for things that are related and useful but are not present. So an example would be if I have a package that has an origin or a source, say it's an RPM and it references a source RPM. If that source RPM is not installed, we don't say that there is a entirely different node or package in the SBOM that represents that source RPM, because it's not actually installed. There's not a good way to say this is installed versus not installed. So in that same vein, we've had these opinions about what the ontology should be, and I'm kind of want to open this up to say, like, hey, should we start being able to have different flavors of an SBOM. So being able to say merge whatever you can or flatten the SBOM or maybe separate things out where it's like, okay, I have separate dependency trees into different files. This can go many different ways, but um, curious on folks' thoughts.
I think the devil for that one is in the details of like where do you split the baby? Because some people have like opinions about what constitutes the same package versus some other people think it's more specific versus less specific. Like, okay, for let's take the example on the issue right now. You have container D that's at v1.7.27. Great. That is a known entity. But if you go through all of the properties of that thing, any person could package something named container D at that version, like you could mimic that package data and you could place it at those different paths and there could still be like a different SHA about it if you built it a little differently, like locally, or there could be small differences between the metadata of each one that that would say, okay, the one installed at bin CTR has a different SHA-SUM than the one installed at container shim. So then if you say, okay, now I have all three, like I've identified that this package and all the bytes in it are identical to the package at this path, you could then probably do a one-to-many of like, these packages are all the same, one entity, bomb ref. They are found at this many locations here. But the spec for like Cyclone DX doesn't offer that. They want one location for one package for the bomb ref for as you discover them. Like if we did the flavor thing, Alex, I think it would have to be just in Syft JSON where we declared this is what constitutes the same package, and we do the one-to-many relationship of package to locations in that case, based on our what our definition of a single entity is. And that's like per ecosystem, right? Because some things you don't have just a raw binary that's like you know, can I take the sum of all these bytes and compare it to something else and say these are equal?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, what is the heuristic that is like the deduplication? Like, so like one simple rule could be package type, name, version. If those match, that's the merge logic, irregardless of the all the metadata that could be different. And because that's just kind of a separate problem, right? Like, so if we just look at Syft JSON for a second, we don't think about cycling, we don't think about SPDX. Um, Another rule of thumb for Syft is like we try not to be lossy, and so we wouldn't want to in that Syft JSON because we deduped or we sorry because we merged these together. It's not deduping; it's merging at this point. Um, we wouldn't want to like pick one metadata over the other. We probably would want some way to say like, well, I found this at three locations. Here's the three metadatas. They're distinctly different, and I kind of agree there. Like, in other words, I feel like there's probably a way where we have a join field that on the metadata, so we could say like, oh, at these locations I found this thing, this metadata struct. At these other locations I found this thing, this other metadata struct, um, and we could still capture that in the Syft JSON output for that package, but we could also still like merge them together, so to speak. There's cons to that, but it would allow us to put things together that today naturally do not go together because of what you're saying, like slightly different contents for logically the same package. I'm kind of interested in the like I gave the example up front of like oh, package type name version, and that is the logic, but we could even make that configurable. We could say like, hey, the default is for this in this mode, but it could be that it's package name, package version. We ignore the type. Um, it could be some other permutations, but that could even be a user configuration where the user drives what what is the heuristic for the same package.
Right.
I mean, honestly, that's kind of where my head goes, which is it really is oriented around like what do you it's a presentation question, first of all, like deduplication or not. It's not accuracy or correctness. It's just like what do you want to see basically. Not just with your eyes, but in the document. Um, but it kind of my head kind of goes to yeah, being able to define like this is the tuple of information that's used to uniquely identify something. Then when you're presented presentation would reflect whatever you define as like this is the fields that are used to define, what a piece of software is.
And
Where that gets fuzzy in my head though is when there are two different representations of a package, like an RPM and a Python wheel, an RPM that installs a Python wheel. Very few of those things actually do line up. Like we have a different opinion about, like, those are actually the same thing. One is just a container for the other thing, even though it's described differently. Then
But-
things, I think, start to get a little bit complicated.
But there's also no common heuristic of like when you're doing packaging for say like RPM, if it's just a common pass through of what the software upstream publisher is distributing, or if there's some coloring in or some kind of enhancement or security that's done by the package maintainer of the distro. Like think of people who do security patches for things that they bring into their repos. They go, okay, we're not going to contribute it upstream. We've realized this project isn't taking these patches or whatever, but we're going to do a fix for it. So what I've installed from the package manager is different from what you would install if you just like grabbed it off the distributor's website because of either the enhanced packages or the enhanced changes or not packages, but enhanced
yeah,
patches to it.
right. Well, and that's almost the opposite feature, right? Like this, the thing at issue here is like we found the same package in many places, and then the other issue that Dan brought up is like we can view the same place as two different packages.
Well, I think it's there are two packages that represent the exact same package.
Right, but okay, yeah. So there are two packages that represent the exact same package, but I think it depends a lot on like downstream, the downstream use case. Like it sounds like this person might have like, I don't know, the person I'm selling this software to wants an SBOM and they want a sort of deduplicated SBOM because they're just going to compare the packages on it to a list of packages they don't want, or a list of packages they're willing to take dependency on. Or it's a vulnerability scanner, and like that Perl is basically all Grype is gonna consider right now, although we're thinking of adding like reachability stuff into um Grype's Go, in which case like those are not going to be the same package anymore because they're going to have different reachability information if we go that route. Um
I don't want to touch on.
yeah, what's that?
I kind of want to touch on that part, like to emphasize again that like if you have two separate dependency graphs today, and if we merge and change the heuristic to be able to merge these things together, then like now I've got one dependency graph. And if you do a reachability analysis, which I think is exactly what you're saying, like this is, you can lie to yourself now. You can say, I can update this dependency over here and it's going to affect my app in this way. When in actuality, those dependency trees aren't actually merged in real life. They just look like they're merged because we threw everything together because we have this heuristic that, allows someone to merge stuff.
Right. And yeah, and so I think this is sort of a presentation difference. And I think that I like that the user says, I understand this is technically accurate. It results in a very noisy SBOM. And I think that's, I don't know, is there something else we can do to like help manage noisy SBOMs? I think Keith put a link to like an SBOM querying and presenting and exploring kind of issue. I think 564 is a really old Syft issue of like maybe we should have a nice way of like exploring SBOMs or something. And
I really want to build that one day, by the way.
yeah, that'd be super
Waiting
cool.
for the free time to do it.
And you can also like you can hack together something like this today. Like if you can just do like use JQ to filter out only the pearls and pipe it to sort pipe unique, and just like now you have a pearl per line, and you have all the unique pearls, and that's basically what the person wants. I Yeah, and it's also it's interesting because the license like I guess the license will probably be the same on all of those, but there might be licensing like on the binaries or whatever might be different. So
We'll say that, and this is where I think the merge logic. Yeah, so we have a lot of fields on package. And I think and what I was saying for the metadata section, we could kind of make a wrapping join where it's like there's a struct that says it's a map of location to original metadata type. And so you don't have to merge the metadatas together. Those you can still keep them all kind of joined together there. But it's the package itself, name, version, Perl, CPEs, licenses, like that information needs to be reconciled in a way. And so, if the user says, I'm going to contrive this a little bit. Like, say they say the package type and package name must be the same, but the version does not. Well, what do we do when we run across a different version? We don't. Version is not a pluralized field, unlike licenses, which is. So we can, in your example, when the licenses are different, we could just merge them together because they said they wanted this to be merged. Thus, yeah, we won't know which one originally came from where, but that's okay. But like for things like version or for things like Perl, there isn't a good way um, to merge those fields together in a way that wouldn't be lossy, or you'd have to choose one over the other or some such. Um, well, so I don't know. I'm definitely interested in a feature like this. The comment about this being a presentation, I think I don't actually understand this being a presentation thing only. Where that's meant to be applied. Is that like a low level comment to the where in the code, like this is only in the formatters, or we're just saying simply this affects the output and that's that, or
Yeah, I guess, yeah, maybe that isn't as clear. Not the code. I was thinking though that,
got it.
the data, it's not about changing or finding more data. Like the
Yeah.
Syft JSON, the internal data model, all the data is there. This is just about the representation of that information inside of the supported output formats, whether it be table, whether it be Cyclone DX JSON, whether it be Syft native makes me a little nervous because then, there could be different forms of it. I think you kind of referred to that earlier, Alex, saying like, does this actually call for different types of SBOMs? Or is it more about like, when you're taking we look at the Syft native JSON as kind of a fixed data source, and then you can generate different types of Cyclone DX JSON that are all format compliant, but the way that the information is being converted is just different based on your preferences. I think that's how I was thinking about it, but there's a lot of other ways to think about it as well, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by presentation, yeah.
My brain is going to he mentions at the end of his issue like downstream consumers submitting, like he's throwing this over the fence to people and they're going, oh my god, this is so many dependencies, we're trying to vuln scan this, and for every 3 or 4 dependencies that are found under every 3 or 4 location of the same package, you're getting a report. So like basically when you do the report, the answer is, what do I remediate? And the answer is yes. And you just so do you just get like a but then to me that moves further away from the truth of what is there, because the remediation for each one of these locations might be different. Like you might be getting user bin container D from one process, you might be getting user bin CTR from another I mean, if it's all the same install path of how this is getting done, then great. You do one fix, you upgrade the version, and then the vulnerabilities kind of drop off the report. But when we do this kind of not deduplication, but like this consolidation, this merging, would we ever experience any kind of like lossy vulnerability data reporting? Like, does this impact it in a way that would make it where you would still have positives coming through because you remediated in the wrong place?
In theory, like if we're talking about So if we're talking about like going up the dependency graph, like from near the leaves up towards, can I find all the roots that are connected? In theory, no, like it should be okay. It's the other way I would be more concerned about it because when you merge those together, you could start at a root and go down. And it used to be you would find one leaf and now you might find 10, and you don't know, like you you might be lying to yourself about um, what actions you should be taking remediation wise.
Right.
So the reachability analysis, I think, is impacted. Um, in terms of what, if I were to say like, oh, well, this package is used by X, like the root packages, those should not be impacted. So I guess it depends on like what kind of questions being asked. Um, yeah.
Right. Well, and it's also, it really depends what you're doing, right? Because you could just write all the unique pearls to a Perl file and have Grype scan that, and that would tell you, like, setting aside like reachability analysis because we didn't build that yet. That would, like, if you just want to gate, if you just want to say I don't want to deploy if there's if there's high CVEs, that'll work.
Yeah.
But if you want to like understand which upgrade commands to run, it won't. And so I think it really depends um on what the downstream is. Like I think that the like logical package only is an interesting request. It's almost like what you mean by a logical package depends on what you're trying to do with an SBOM. Um, and so yeah, I don't know that we'll end up with one size fits all. What about going? Dan mentioned earlier, like, what if we have sort of a new presentation where we basically have, I don't know what it would actually look like, but it's logically a map of specified fields to like artifact information, right? So like, I think by default, um, we have sorry. So by default, we have like location is one of the fields, right? We have like basically like name, type, version, file system coordinates, meaning basically path and layer is like the four tuple. And this person wants to be able to drop. We already have dropping one of those, which is the squashed scope, drops a layer from
Yeah.
that. And then he also wants to be able to drop path from that. Um, and you can imagine somebody who only cares about CPEs or something wants to drop type and just bunch all the CPEs together. I don't know why they'd want to do that, but people do things. So that's it feels almost like the layer scope to me, right? Where it's just like because we can already say, um, sort of, do I scan each layer of the image or do I just squash them all and scan the like last layer of the image? Um, so what would it look like if we wanted to have a presenter, which is basically a map of like n tuple of whatever fields we consider make a package unique to whatever we know about it. Like we could make that presenter, but then of course we're making up a format that's not obvious.
Yeah.
Like it's
I,
not going to help downstream consumers much if they just have to convert it back to a real format that people use.
I'm thinking about this as if it's I've got two places where this kind of like naturally fits, I feel. Um, so the first place is kind of like getting in the middle. So like right now we have you catalog, um, there's stuff in the middle, and at the end you format. So the stuff in the middle is fun. I'll put it in this bucket called just compliance. But it's, I'm basically taking a configuration and then I'm standardizing what I found or didn't find. And so I think an example would be we have a package compliance configuration for missing information. If you have a version that's missing, you may decide that I want that to be configurable. If you're missing the version, I want you to drop the package. If you're missing the version, I want you to put in a stub version. And there's like another option there too. But the goal is like the user, the catalogers raise up the packages that they find with empty versions and messy data, et cetera. And this compliance layer does the work of, oh, maybe I'll drop it then after the cataloger has found it, or maybe I'll patch it with some extra information, et cetera. So it's this thing in the middle that's responsible for like finalizing a set of packages based off of user configuration. So it's thing A. Well, yeah, Chris.
We also have the relationships config where we exclude packages with overlap. So that's a subtraction, not a merge, but it is affecting, like there's a couple places in the config too that we can put this. But keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. But in like the processing of like finding packages to presenting them, there's this spot in the middle that is good for it. And like you're saying too, that's also where we're doing like the relationship stuff. That's where the munging is. So it's like kind of place A, I can imagine this. Place B, and this isn't mutually exclusive to A, is actually its own other subcommand. Imagine that I have an SBOM already and I want to go and do this like collapsing logic based off of this, so I have it in my head that I'm like, oh, I got this SBOM, cool. It's oriented everything around what Will said, package type, name, version, file location, and like the layer ID. So well, I don't want that. I want these 3, not these 5 things. And I just want to be able to operate on the SBOM that I already have and get a new SBOM out that is been correctly merged. And that fits nicely into like a pipeline of things that we're already doing today. So we could do it internally in the Syft root or the scan command, and we could also do it as a separate command. Yeah, Chris.
We could enable that second command by doing it in the relationship way, where if we add a new type of relationship where we like can describe packages as like co-equal in that way, you could generate a Syft SBOM that knows how to basically reduce itself into that format. So if they previously generated one, right, they don't have to go back and do the processing. You could just say, oh, like here's the full, like to Will's point, the full all layers version. Like that comes out. But if you run it through the subcommand and you take that document, we're able to go from the kind of like larger full information stack into a more compressed view space. And if you keep the relationships in that view space, right, then you can like you could do an in and out, right? You could go both ways. So as long as that relationships kind of list stays consistent.
That's a fun idea where, yeah, you're really just, that's actually consistent with what we do in other places where we don't drop something, we add extra information. What is the relation?
It's like the accordion kind of pattern.
Well, we do that today with a relationship. File ownership overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and for folks that are watching, it's the specifics on that one are, we had this debate about this was about really in Grype, like, so in Grype it's invalid to try to scan both a package that's subsumed by another package. Sorry, go back. Package A and package B, let's say an RPM and a Python package. Odds are all the vulnerability information for that same logical package, this group of 2 packages, is really going to be oriented around the RPM, not about the Python package, because that's the last mile in terms of like the packaging. So like, yeah, the upstream, the Python package was created, but it was packaged by Red Hat and then distributed. And so they have kind of like the best knowledge about its environment and what last modifications were done. So deferral to the OS package is usually correct in terms of vulnerabilities, but it's not necessarily correct for all other dimensions like license compliance, et cetera. Like it might just be the Python package is more reliable. So we were having this debate about like, oh, okay, Grype needs to know to drop packages that like have this kind of ownership overlap where like we found the RPM, we found the Python package, but there's some, we can tell that they overlap in a way where one owns the other. Does Syft drop it? Do we what's the right way to deal with that situation? And to what Chris is saying, like, well, keep the information, keep both packages, but like add a relationship saying this one is really owning this other one, in terms of by a file overlap. So we have this new relationship that we created that and just put it in between the two, and it's worked really great. We've been able to keep all the information, and still, like, Grype can conditionally drop that when it sees that. So yeah, this might be another one of those cases.
Because Syft could, instead of it being another tool that keys off the relationship, Syft could key off the own thing and just produce a truncated document based on the relationships in there. Like it has like you just look at it and then you get the output of smaller or larger, lossy or not lossy, depending on what you're looking at.
We'll pop
We
it up.
could, we could do that for all packages for the heuristic that you mentioned, Alex, the name, version, and type.
Oh, you're saying pick a default of like name, or sorry, what are you saying? Say it
Yeah,
one.
pick a default heuristic that what is a co-equal package, right? Create the relationship for name, version, and type, and then that relationship that we grow the SBOM with relationships, but then depending on if the config is enabled, right? More relationships, good, but less packages in the final output for people who want like a condensed view.
Well, and this is where I feel like the command makes sense here. So I think Syft just doing what it typically does, let it keep doing what it's already doing today. Somebody can opt into a configuration, and that configuration would have A, the tuple of things that defines the heuristic, and then B, what action to take. Do we merge these things together? Do I drop and like where I prefer one kind of thing over another kind of thing? Do I annotate? So that would be like what you're saying. I'm going to add a relationship. I'm not actually going to remove anything from the SBOM or try to merge anything. I'm just going to add a relationship between these two things. Um, so like with that heuristic and the action, might be enough to be able to do any of these things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be a powerful capability. Now I'm thinking about some of the weird cases you might end up with. Remove name from the tuple and remove version and remove location. So you basically have like, you have a thing of type Golang and it is vulnerable to many, many things. Yeah.
I think what worries me about just this, like if I can think of one con to like implementing this, is that the core of the issue is my SBOM is verbose, and we're talking about, oh, let's add more relationships to like and make a tool so that you can pass it through a command that makes it less verbose. But like it's like we have to go out to go in, kind of.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I
Well,
was saying. It's not mutually exclusive to,
Right.
so you can have the separate command, but you could also have that baked into your scan command. So it's responding to the same configuration. So if your configuration is, here's my heuristic and the action is merge, doing a Syft scan would just naturally do that. Or you can take a SBOM you already created a year ago and do that without having to recreate the SBOM again. So
right.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we need to add because all the fields are already fields, like the SBOM already has these in it. It's really just a performance optimization to emit the relationships, right? Because we could just build. You could just traverse the SBOM and infer those relationships instead. Um, so that is sort of an implementation detail, but if we're, I think I hear more often that Syft SBOMs are too big than that they're too small. Um, so I'm hesitant to add bytes to the SBOM.
yeah, so I would be interested in this, but I do head nod to Dan. There's probably needs to be some guards around what fields you're allowed to,
Yeah. Well,
what fields must be there for a basic identity.
and I think that that's sort of like Syft sort of has the rule that a package is a name and a version. Like that's where we switch from emitting a package to emitting an error that we couldn't identify a package as if we don't have a name or don't have a version. Um, so I think that's the sort of minimal. like the sort of minimal SBOM is just like a sort of deduplicated list of package name at package version. And you can't deduplicate more than that. Yeah, what would you think of this being part of like Syft convert? Right. So you have a Syft JSON and then you can do Syft convert, I don't know, dash dash merge key equals, name type version and dash o CDX or whatever. And so then this person gets a CDX SBOM that deduplicates. Just make a little bit of a, I think that would be a nice place to put this because converting is already sort of like I have this SBOM and I need to just like represent it with
Yeah.
totally different presenter parameters. So I think that's sort of a natural home for it. Is that Syft convert can like optionally sort of merge the SBOM or sample it or whatever.
Yeah, I think that makes tons of sense. The only reason why I had this default in this other spot is because I have this I feel like that there's a subset of operations for an SBOM that we could be doing that we like could be offering, but we don't have it. And it's actually kind of related to what Keith presented down below. So down at the very bottom, there's that link to like the related to 564 there. You open up that guy. And so this is related, but it's not the same thing, just to be very clear. So this is meant to be like, hey, what if so one of the main problems that SBOMs bring is that you need to be able like well sometimes people need to be able to understand what is in them. So from this one sense, yes, I created the SBOM, I'm compliant, it helps with my compliance, it helps me pass this in other tools to figure out if I'm compliant in other ways. But if somebody really wanted to ask questions to get answers, SBOMs can sometimes be very difficult to work with. And the point of this issue is to say, well, what if we had a way that you can like ask questions to get answers very easily? This is before LLMs were really a thing when this was written. So maybe this has changed some. But I also think of this same kind of issue where it's I want to do some operation on the SBOM to answer a particular question. I also feel that there is a kind of a missing set of scalpels for I want to be able to operate an SBOM in terms of editing it. So I don't know if this would be like a Syft edit command, but it would be, well, I want to drop packages of this particular type, or anything that doesn't have digest information I think should be gone, or drop any metadata for packages because it's just too much. Like stuff like that, where it's people are writing in the same way that this is supposed to keep people from writing Python scripts after they generate their Syft SBOM to answer a question. I feel like we want to also help people not have to write Python scripts to do things like edit it in some way or shape or form and in common ways. And we might be lacking what the specific operations and nouns are, like verbs and nouns for those operations, but they feel similar in that sense. So going all the way back, Will, you're saying this fits under the convert pretty well. Totally agree. I also wonder if there are other things like, there are filtering flags or other things for mutating the SBOM on convert that would also belong there, or if it really is another command and I lack the verb for what it would be.
Yeah. Yeah, I found myself like since I started working on Syft and Grype, I'm a lot better at JQ. And I don't think that's something we want to require of our users. Like JQ is an awesome tool, but it's a very general tool. And manipulating lists of packages we could maybe end up somewhere like something that's like not powerful enough to manipulate arbitrary JSON documents, but a little easier to learn, like telling it to dedupe the artifacts by this key or something is not. You'd have to do a lot of hand or LLM coding to get JQ to do that, but you wouldn't Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's
And
all I got for this one. Oh, sorry, unless somebody's got something else.
yeah, we should
Yeah,
we should link to the stream and let the person know we discussed this at some length and see what they're.
Yeah, I'll put in a few thoughts that we had from this discussion too. So
Cool.
I was gonna try out the accordion trick after stream and see what adding a relationship looks like. If I could get a smaller SBOM with that, it could be like a fun afternoon. Just POC.
we'll have fun.
There's
Okay.
Syft.
Yeah, that was a great discussion. I mean, good 40 minutes of the session here, really digging into this one. So thank you for the issue. And yeah, I agree in terms of follow-up. A link to this discussion would be great. Otherwise, it seems like, yeah, there's a lot of different ways this could be accomplished. I did just, before we move on, like, I was stepping back and saying, I'm not suggesting this is the solution, but something tells me a thing in convert where you, if you were to do like, or even -o, you know, Syft -o cyclone dx json dash orient by Perl would probably hit the 80-20 on this type of request, because Perls don't have locations, you know, for the most part. And you know, like I said, I'm not saying that's the suggested solution, but what we consider, if it can kind of like achieve something similar, I feel like we'd cover a lot of space, most likely. That's my intuition after the discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Instead of picking, you know, package type, name, version, that's what Perl is.
Yeah, I mean, it occurred to me about 75% of the way through, I think we're kind of describing what a PORL is.
Yeah.
It's a selected set of metadata to attempt to uniquely identify a piece of software, and it doesn't have location in it. Okay, well, let's pop back. Thanks again, that was a great discussion. Let's pop back to the list here and see if we want to cover the next one, or I thought maybe we could look at some PRs that need discussion. What would you guys like to do?
There's a few in triage as well that we haven't looked at yet. And from an issue perspective here, here's that. I'll plop that board in chat.
Oh, okay, thanks.
But yeah, there's the top 3 in triage might be good ones to take a poke at. I have not opened them yet, so I'm not certain.
Let's take a look.
Oh, if you the awaiting response, that's like us waiting for the community to respond. You can collapse that one. Yeah. So one of these top 3.
Get one of these real quick.
Yeah, let's go for that Terraform one, sure.
Terraform? All right. Four, 336.
Oh, I have some context on this one. So Syft does not generate a Perl for Terraform packages because we didn't. So there are 2 kinds of things that are Terraform packages, right? There's a Terraform module and a Terraform provider. I think are the 2 kinds. Like if we just go look at the like Terraform registry browsing, I think we'll see 2 kinds of packages. Let me see if I can find a good link real quick.
Yeah, I'll drop this in the chat too. It's not it's not your exact question, but it's the issue you wrote for against the Perl spec for this.
Right. That's the context I'm trying to build for that. But even if you go to like the standard Terraform registry, there's providers and modules are like, and it's not obvious. Like I think the reason, right? So this issue, where we say like, hey, can there be a Perl type for Terraform modules? Is not closed. So there's no standardized Perl type for Terraform modules. So that's why Syft doesn't emit a Perl on them, because otherwise we end up doing stuff.
We don't want to make a breaking change, essentially, because if we assume that they're the same thing for now and the spec lands the other way, we would have
Right.
no choice but to quote unquote fix that bug by breaking that SIP behavior. And more importantly, folks have a historical set of documents they've created now, and they're all
Right.
wrong. So
And right. And so like a good example of this happening actually is Red Hat's CSAF JSON. They've started publishing Red Hat security advisories as CSAF JSON. And they had a PR against the package URL spec to add a package type for RPM modules that was going to be like package Red Hat RPM mod, so that they could have like different module streams specified in the Perl. And that PR was eventually abandoned, and then they had to make like a breaking change to their CSAP JSON because they had speculated when they initially released it where the Perl spec was going to go, and it didn't. So the short answer here is there's no officially specified way of describing a Perl for a Terraform module. The issue said Terraform packages, which I suppose could be a Terraform provider, but I think Terraform providers are really Go packages. Right? Like you implement an interface, and so it's just a Go package.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we did some research on this, and they do not have to be Go packages. But I don't think we could find an example where it wasn't a Go package.
I thought they like implemented an interface in Go. But is it? Yeah.
Well, you could do like a the plugin system over like gRPC and do it in whatever you want.
Oh. Oh dear. Okay.
This is where I'm in I don't know land, so I could just
anyway,
lied.
so but anyway, a Terraform provider. So to quick distinction, like there's a Terraform module that's like a bundle of Terraform YAML that like knows how to do something. A Terraform provider is like there's a Terraform provider that knows how to talk to AWS. There's a Terraform provider that knows how to talk to GCP. And so I think a Terraform provider is always a program or a library, even if it's not always in Go. Whereas a Terraform module is a Terraform specific thing. So we probably want to just relate this to that. Yeah, it's empty, and the reason it's empty is because the contributor who contributed the Terraform log file parser to Syft said, "What do you want me to put in the Perl?" And we told them there's no specified Perl, so put an empty string for now, so we don't have to change our mind about what Terraform Perls look like later. That's the short answer here. So we should probably just explain that in the issue and backlink to the issue, because there's even the same contributor even opened a PR against the Perl spec, but it's been open for a while and no one has merged it, and so that's the status here.
Yeah, and the spec tends to it moves at the pace it's going to move at, so it could be a while where this is open.
Yeah, I think basically the Syft issue is blocked on this Perl spec issue, and it is what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, we basically can't guess without breaking Syft. So
I am kind of interested. This might so maybe before I open that can of worms. What do you guys think the right follow up for this is? Like link over to that Perl spec and basically say what Will what you just said. Like essentially, the Perl, our choice is to leave it empty if there isn't a formal Perl spec that describes this type of software. Like that's how our SBOM generation choice works at the moment.
Right. Because otherwise the Perl spec could change their mind, and then Syft is faced between making a breaking change and being spec non-compliant, and that's a really bad choice. So
And that's the can of worms I was curious about, because boy, I've seen a lot of tools that absolutely make up stuff to put in the like namespace of a PURL, a generated PURL, if it's just not in the spec. But is there a catch-all in Perl spec? Sorry for my ignorance, but
there's generic. There's package generic, which is what Syft currently uses. If we find an executable and we can like figure out the version, like the binary classifier, like we're able to regex a version out of user bin curl.
But is that meant to be there isn't, that you're trying to describe something that does exist in the world, but the Perl spec doesn't have a namespace for it. Does the spec say in that case you're supposed to use generic? Because that could change the decision.
That's true. It could be, and I think it's also, let's go look at the Perl spec and see, like, do we think that package generic is a valid choice here?
That might cause problems for us, because we might be using generic to mean something different. Like it's a binary. I always have trouble finding this one. Do you guys have the link for where it is?
It's going to be in. They moved it too, but it's going to be in maybe Perl specification.rst. Yeah, it's in docs now. Maybe under standard. I don't know. It used to be a single giant RST file.
Places at the bottom. Wait, go back.
Oh, sorry. I thought this maybe was the one. No?
No, if you were looking for the types, right?
Well, information about like if there isn't a type, are you supposed to use generic, or what are you supposed to do?
Right, that might be at the definition of generic.
I think it is.
I'll look on my own browser and see what I find. Maybe I can share something.
Yeah, sorry if that's the wrong question. I just thought it might be.
Some of the other ones that were under are to triage or no triage. I responded to and closed. But I do want to announce on the live stream that yes, we are aware that we have to migrate the archiver dependency, and I'm getting that done right after this live stream so that we can get that merged in and some vulnerabilities resolved against Syft. So thank you for the issue reports, and we are well on top of those. Please go back to the PRL discussion. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, there's the generic definition is in here. It's not super helpful. It looks like. Oh, that's sorry. There's a.
I dropped in the chat.
Readable version, like a human readable one, that I linked in the chat. It might be the right link to open.
Got it. 1 second.
And it looked the same as what you were about to open, but then I didn't see .json versus .md or whatever. Right. And so all the examples are like package generic, and then I found this at a VCU at like I have a version control URL, right? Like I'm just gonna say I have, you know, here is a package that I got via git clone, right? So it's not an npm package. It's not packaged for npm. I got it via git clone, which is kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's not obvious to me that.
Yeah, it doesn't explicitly say if you have a type that isn't currently one of the formal types, then you shall use generic. So
Yeah, maybe there's in the
might explain
README.
why there's the ambiguity. It kind of implies that, right? Because, you know, these examples don't have a supported type, and so here they are. I just wonder. So, you know, our current choice is to leave it blank, but a different choice would be to use the generic type. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think another question is like, is it like a breaking change? If we say, well, let's say we make it generic now and then change it, it's kind of a breaking change because we're going to end up like, right, we want to be very careful. Syft is 1.0. We do not make breaking changes to Syft. But is going from generic to a specific Perl type a breaking change? I guess it kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one's more questionable. Meaning, I could see that being a better argument to make. If we started with generic because there was nothing in the world that we could express it, whereas opposed to if we
Made one up. Yeah.
right. Like we have made one up before, and like it ended up being fine, but we've never made one up that like was also another one. And you know, so there was the fact that we might be semantically overloading one that exists is the worrisome part. And so like, you know, I think us defaulting to generic is not a bad idea. We'd have something.
Yeah.
Generic, I find generic to be horribly useless. So I think that's the very next issue that would come in the next day after we do this. Is like, hey, the generic Perl is useless. I really want another Perl. And we would say again, there is no Perl type for this. So, but I mean, we would have a Perl. So, so we just don't know in
Yeah.
this spec. So,
Well, the
And
only other
they do
thing
have a list of.
the only other thing I could think of is what I have up on the screen today to maybe inform the direction is to look at this candidate Perl types at the Perl spec location. You know, because then the chances are it would, you know, if accepted, it would be one of these, but unfortunately, the specific issue we're talking about says there should be two different Terraform.
yep. Yeah, because that's actually what we do. So what exactly your suggestion is what we've done for, and I forget what the ecosystems were, but we had some catalogers come in and the same question. This is a very common question for new catalogers nowadays because they're becoming more and more esoteric, which is like, hey, I'm done with the cataloger. What should the Perl be? And we tend to say if there is a candidate Perl type, like we'll just go ahead and you know and probably use that one.
Right.
Because you know that's usually okay.
Right. And I think, yeah, so maybe the Terraform, like, and it does say for Terraform modules, not Terraform packages. And I think, I don't really know Terraform very well, but I think that's what's being described in this log file is the packages, not the providers. So it's worth linking up the two and seeing what they say, but maybe it's worth accepting a PR that uses package Terraform.
And I guess
I think
minimally describing that today our choice is if there isn't an official and there isn't one on the candidate list, we leave it blank, just to make that an explicit, like, it's a choice, not a bug, right? Might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Also, sorry
Cool.
to interrupt, but I mean, we are a little over time, so I think we're gonna have to wrap it up for our live session this week. I think we'll follow up to have an explicit next action on this, but we'll try to make sure to respond with some of the information about what we just discussed. But another great topic.
Agree.
Any closing comments before we sign off for the week?
I think not.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys. Thanks, Alex. Thank you, Will. Thanks, Chris. Great discussion as always. Thanks everybody who was watching today and on chat. And we will sign off for now and talk to you all next week.
Right now.
Okay.
See you, folks.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.